Let me start recording, and there we go. Okay. Yeah, so thank you everybody for coming today. My name is Mark Phillip, and I'm an application engineer with Studica Incorporated. And today we're going to be talking a bit about Toon and some of the software platforms they have, specifically Toon Harmony and Storyboard Pro. A little bit of background about Studica. We're a software and hardware reseller for pretty much primarily educational institutions, as well as like students and faculty, pretty much anybody in the educational space. And we primarily deal in North America, and we've been doing this for a little over 30 years. So we have quite a lot of experience working with schools and educators and getting them the getting them the software, hardware that they need to see their program succeed. So if you need to contact me for any reason, my email address is markp@studica.com, and you can also see our site at www.studica.com. So a little background about Toon, since some people may not be aware of them. Basically, they're an animation software company. Well, not exclusively animation. They do a lot of software in the realm of like the entertainment industry, for instance. So they make animation software, storyboarding software, and things like that. Their software is quite heavily used in the industry. It is industry standard, and because of that, it's also starting to be adopted more and more by schools, both K through 12 schools as well as higher education, to try and help prepare students with the proper tools that they're going to need if they go into like an animation career or doing any sort of kind of 2D visual art. So I always like to kind of start off with some of the motivation from like the economic perspective. Like what kind of things can your students get into if they pursue, an animation program or some kind of degree in the visual arts? And there's quite a lot of different job titles available, especially nowadays, where more and more industries are having a need for people who can do digital animation, digital, photo manipulation, things like that. Especially as more and more fields become more and more digitized with computers, that data is having to be modeled in, visual ways now. And so there's a lot of industries that you might not have thought, 10, 15 years ago would have a need for like an animator on staff. But that's rapidly changing due to the proliferation of digital media, and even things like research, for instance, has these, massive data sets and things that have to be visualized some way. And so a lot of these institutions, organizations are hiring animators to help them do that. So the kind of point I like to make is that there's a lot of opportunity out there, despite what a lot of people might think about the visual arts, that, there's not a lot of opportunity. It's kind of one of the stereotypes, but that's not really true. Especially nowadays, there's a lot of opportunity for people who have this skill set. So that's some of the economic motivation there. And further on that same topic, I went to the U.S. Department of Labor's site and looked into multimedia artists and animators, and basically looking at their, job prospects, or sorry, the job title and kind of what statistics it carries with it for the next 10 years. So kind of the most interesting stat here was the job outlook, which is the projected percent change in employment between 2016 and 2026. And for this particular job title, being a multimedia artist or animator, that is a positive 10% growth rate in employment in the next 10 years. Next, 7 years now? But that's faster than average, faster than most other careers, actually. So we're actually going to see quite a large number of new jobs being added, at least in the United States, for animators and people who have that skill set. And I always like to point out too that the National Center for Education Statistics, they basically found that visual and performing arts were the 10th most conferred bachelor's degree nationwide. So despite having this, faster job outlook, this higher, like faster than average rate of new jobs being added, despite that, visual and performing arts degrees are not as sought after, at least currently, by a lot of students going into higher education. So what that tells me is that there's going to be a lot of employment opportunities potentially where there's not going to be enough skilled labor who can meet that demand. So to me, that might mean that, and this is speculation right here, but that probably means that, your students who are graduating in this skill set will probably be able to negotiate themselves better wages, and have no shortage of jobs to look for. So yeah, interesting stats there. Kind of just like to give that motivation from the college perspective. You want your students to be able to be getting the education, the tools that they need to be able to find work and succeed in their postgraduate life. So with that being said, we're going to first take a look at Toon Boom Harmony and what Toon Boom Harmony is and some of the features it has. This is going to be a very big picture look, nothing too specific, but to just kind of give you an overview of the program. So to start off with, Harmony is a 2D animation software. The premium version also introduces some 3D features. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But there's 3 different versions of Harmony. There's Essentials, Advanced, and Premium. And we'll take a look at kind of all 3 of those. Now, between the 3 of those programs, you're going to be able to get all of these features no matter which one you have. So whether you have Essentials, Advanced, or Premium, you will have access to inking, painting, rigging, and animating tools. Those are kind of your big 4. If you don't have those, you don't really have an animation program. So even the most simple version of Harmony has these features. You also can do compositing and special effects. You have access to vector tools so that you don't have to do just bitmap, which is nice, especially with like modern web development assets and things like that. You can also export directly to game engines, which ends up making Harmony a great tool for game development as well for people who might be interested in going into that realm. So for instance, you can take like an animation you make in Harmony and bring it right into the Unity engine or to like Unreal Engine and things like that. And then lastly, you can export to pretty much all your common file formats you might be used to from other programs. So for still images, you can do your PNG, TGA, JPEG, bitmap, GIF. I think you can even do Photoshop, if I remember, PSD files. For video, you can do your common video codecs, like H.264 being the prominent one for 1080p high definition. So between any version of Harmony, you can do all these things. Now, where they start to differ is kind of in some more nuanced ways. So Harmony Essentials basically has what we just discussed on the previous slide, and that's pretty much it. So this is kind of like your entry-level version of the software. This might be good for people who maybe don't have any experience with animation, or maybe like an introductory class or something where you're just going to be teaching basic animation and basic like rigging and things like that. You don't need those advanced tools. These screenshots are showing you the drawing and animation dropdowns, which are kind of where the bulk of your tools are. And we'll see this kind of expands out with the advanced version right here. So we can see those same toolbars. We've now added a number of different features. So in Harmony Advanced, we add morphing and some advanced onion scanning to the program. We also add some extra timeline functionality. So here you can actually see, like on the animate menu, we have a morphing pull-out, a lip sync pull-out, linear motion, no Z dragging. There's some extra features here for fine-tuning your animation that you don't get in the Essentials version. Additionally, in the drawing tools, we have some extra features here, like creating color art from line art, generating automats. And then an example of onion scanning is here on the left. Onion scanning basically lets you see the current frame of your animation within the context of the previous and the subsequent frames. So the current frame in this example would be the full colored like ballerina here in the middle. And then the previous frames would be these ones in the red opacity. And then the frames after it would be these ones that are green. So onion scanning is basically just a way to kind of like, look at the context of your animation and fine tune your, what you're working on. This is a feature you only get with Essentials or higher. I also want to point out that Harmony Advanced does include everything that Essentials has too. So all these programs basically just build on the previous version and add extra functionality. So then in Harmony Premium, this is kind of like the professional level of the software. Like this takes everything you have in Essentials and Advanced and then adds some extra features to it. So we get basically a lot more sophisticated like rigging features with Harmony Premium. And we also get more curve and envelope deformers for producing more organic character animation. And we also get the ability to import 3D models. So if you know, have this kind of workflow where maybe you're working with like Blender, 3ds Max, Maya, Cinema 4D, some other 3D software program, you can basically export your file from those programs and bring them into Harmony with the premium version. So you can kind of combine your 2D assets with your 3D assets and make like a really interesting looking scene, for instance. That's something you only get with Harmony Premium. You don't get that with Essentials or Advanced. And then the last bit I like to hit on is what we see in the screenshot here. This is the node-based compositing tree. This is something you only get with Harmony Premium. And anybody who's maybe used other like animation programs or even like photo editing programs have maybe seen something like this. This is a really popular feature right now in a lot of different kind of software because it's a really visual way to understand like how your basically like how your scene is organized and where all of your different effects are being processed, like how the pipeline is layered essentially. And you can drag and drop these curves onto different nodes here to basically create different kinds of behavior and like move effects around in the pipeline to kind of see how they differ. It's sometimes a little bit easier to work this way than to constantly be trying to work with some of the built-in UI features. So this is something though that you only get in the premium version. Very popular with, you know, like professionals. People really like this kind of setup. Quite powerful, but again, you only get that in the premium version. So that's kind of the big picture look at Harmony. And now we're going to step into Storyboard Pro and discuss a bit about that. Storyboard Pro is basically like it sounds. It's a storyboarding software. So it helps you with your pre-production process. You know, it takes away the classic like pencil paper storyboarding and adds some, you know, versatility and some powerful features to really make your pre-production go a bit smoother. So this animated GIF I have here is basically showing you essentially what the program looks like and kind of how you would work within it in action. So if anybody's used any other kinds of like, you know, animation tools or anything like that, you might be familiar with this sort of setup. You have a timeline down here, which is basically all of your different shots, and you can go through it frame by frame, or you can play it back in real time at like 30 FPS, 24 FPS, whatever you set. You have all your layers here, and those are basically your sketches within each shot. You have a bunch of tools here on the left, and you have some other tools across the top. One thing I always like to point out is between Storyboard and Harmony, the user interface is almost identical. So if you were to jump into Harmony from this program, you would actually be seeing almost the same exact setup. There would just be some different tools available to you. But in general, it's nice because if you know how to use one of the programs, then it's really not that hard to jump in and start using the other one because everything's pretty much where you would imagine it to be based on, you know, how you use the other program. So the main features with Storyboard Pro are basically you can actually incorporate your script into the program. So if you have, you know, your screenplay or your script written out somewhere, you can basically import that into your program and it will show up inside Storyboard Pro. So you can just work within the single program. You don't have to keep swapping back and forth between files. Additionally, if you use like Final Draft, which is like industry standard screenwriting software, there is a feature to actually export your script as an XML file and import that into Storyboard Pro, and that will actually like analyze your script and find all of your scene headings and transitions and character dialogue and all that, and basically set up your storyboard for you as far as like putting the scenes where they need to be, putting the transitions where they need to be and all that. So there's some pretty interesting features there to really combine to basically marry your screenwriting software or your script software with the animation side of it. Additionally, you can do real-time playback, kind of like we saw in the animated GIF. You can basically go and look frame by frame or play it back at so many FPS and see how everything looks. Additionally, you can export straight into Harmony if you want to do some more advanced animation. Because Storyboard Pro is not necessarily an animation program. Like you can do some basic like movement and stuff like that, but you can't do really advanced like rigging and things like that. So maybe you want to do some extra animating on your storyboard, you can export it straight into Harmony. Or you can also export it out as like H.264 for video, for instance. One of the coolest features to me is you can actually create camera movement. So if you want to look at what a, like a dolly in, dolly out, pan left, pan right might look like, you can actually do that and see it, in real time. So that's, to me, a fun feature, because before with like pencil paper, you would have to basically annotate that and say, dolly in here, and you would kind of have to imagine it, which is fine, but now you can actually visualize it. There's also collaboration tools built into the software. And the way this looks, or sorry, the way this works is basically you have your project and you essentially like slice it up into, chunks and hand specific parts off to different teammates. They work on that, and the changes they're making are only affecting the part they're working on, and then they can bring their part that they've been working on with all their changes back into the main project without really stepping on anybody else's toes. I always like to hit on the collaboration tools because I think in school especially, there's generally a big push for people, students to be working with other students because they need to get used to working in teams, especially in something like animation where it's very rare you're like working in isolation. You're often working with a lot of other people who, you have to work on communicating, collaborating with each other. And so having collaboration tools kind of helps take away that pain of figuring out like, how are we going to all work on this same project without blowing everything up, right? Like that's kind of handled for you implicitly in the software. And then lastly, you can also integrate your storyboard directly with video editing software like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere or Avid. So maybe you want to work with like some more advanced transitions, or maybe you want to test like a color grade or something like that. You can, you could do that. You could bring your storyboard into those programs as a video file and basically play with that. But that's kind of the big picture look at Storyboard Pro. Now let's talk about, like how do we learn this stuff? Because that's always one of the biggest hurdles to adopting any software is there's always that learning curve, and that often takes time. And what's nice is that Toon Boom offers both paid and free resources to really get you up to speed in a quick, effective manner. So the first thing I'll hit on is the paid professional development. This is something you can pay for, and you'll get a representative from Toon Boom who knows the software in and out to basically work with you for either a half day, a full day, or up to like 1 week. Basically work with you to get you up to speed with everything. That's the paid option, but then there's also free options. And in particular, I always like to look at the Learn portal. So this is in my browser, and this is actually a free website, and you can go to this anytime you want. It's called learn.toonboom.com. And basically this site just has hundreds of hours of content about Toon Boom, storyboard, and Harmony. So and this content ranges from beginner to intermediate to like advanced level concepts. So pretty much any question you might have about the software, you can find an answer for on here somewhere. But we're going to take a quick dive into the site, take a look around. So up at the top, there's a journeys button. And if I click on this, we see all the journeys, which I always use the analogy of like textbooks in school. A journey is kind of like a textbook, right? It covers like some specific topic about something like a science or an art or whatever it might be. And then inside those journeys, you have like chapters essentially. And then inside those chapters, you have like sections of the chapter. So that's kind of how this breaks down, but we can also filter, like maybe I want to look for just beginner level material. I can do that, and I can see there's like a Harmony kickstart, a storyboard kickstart. There's also educational curriculum recommendations here, so you can also take a look at that. But I'm going to click on Harmony Kickstart, and I'm logged into my account, so it tracks my progress. It says I'm 33% through this. But we can do either premium and advanced or essentials. So let's just click on the essentials here to take a look. And in here, there's a couple different modules. So there's like how you set up your project, the very basic stuff with Harmony, like making a project, what's your camera aspect ratio, stuff like that. And then there's like how to draw and animate. So I'll click on how to draw and animate. And in here, I can actually download the scene that they use for the tutorials. So you'll like basically you'll have these YouTube videos or like written instructions about how to do something, and the instructors are often using some pre-built project, and you can get that pre-built project by choosing download materials, so you can follow along if you want to. So we'll click on using the drawing tools here, and there's this YouTube video, and I'll just go and click play just so we can kind of see it. And basically, we have an instructor talking to us and showing us how you use these different draw tools. What's the difference between a brush and a pen? How do I change my color swatches and all these different features within the software? And the instructors are often either Toon Boom representatives, like people who work on the software or know the software really well, or they're actual professionals in the industry, like people who run their own studio or who work for some bigger studio. So you're often getting people who they know these tools in and out, and they know like best practices and things like that. So it's really a great way to familiarize yourself with the software. Additionally, this one doesn't, but typically there's also written instructions, because I do know a lot of schools like block YouTube. So maybe if you're at school, you wouldn't be able to see this, but there's usually written instructions. Not all the videos have them, but other than that, these, the tutorial videos are really great to go through. Additionally, if you create an account and sign in, and creating accounts free, by the way, but if you create an account and sign in, it tracks your progress and also gives you these quizzes at the bottom. And these are almost always, I think they're all just multiple choice. I don't think I've ever seen one that's not, but it basically just asks you some question about, the content you just watched. And, very straightforward. You just pick them, you submit your answers, and it grades you. So, there's no like stakes here necessarily. It's mostly just to test your own knowledge. But as an instructor, you might, go through this and maybe find some potential like midterm questions or something. I don't know. Yeah, so that's generally like what the Learn portal looks like. And this is just one, module and one journey of this whole site. Like I said, there's hundreds of hours of content here. They have material ranging from just like how do you use the basic features up to like really advanced rigging and VFX work and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really a great resource to, especially if you're like a self-starter, self-learner. This is really a great place for you to come and just, go to the search bar and type in something you're looking to do. Like, I want to look, how do I do rigging? You just type in rigging and you're going to find what you need to look, what you need. Yeah, so there's a lot of, where's my power? There we go. There's a lot of learning resources available, whether it's paid or whether it's free. Like Toon Boom provides a lot of resources to really, jumpstart you and get you used to the software as quick as possible. So I want to reiterate that Toon Boom software is industry standard. There's a lot of studios that are using this. Some of the big studios we listed here, this is not all of the studios using the software, but these are just some of the really big ones. And so, preparing your students by giving them access to these tools and getting them familiar with them, that really will help them, I think, if they're intending on looking for work in the industry. I think it will really help them nail an interview and say, yeah, I'm familiar with that software. I'm also familiar with these other programs. And, these studios are using a lot of different things in their pipelines. And the more tools that you know in their pipelines, the more likely it is that you'll be able to find that work. Yeah, so there's just a number of productions that use Toon Boom software in some way, shape, or form. And again, it's just about preparing your students. They're going to be graduating college, and whether they're going to pursue a graduate program or whether they're just going to go try and find work, the point is you want to give them those tools. You want to give them the access and the exposure to these tools so that they can, better accomplish their goals. Because even if they're just going to like a graduate program or something like that, more and more colleges now are adopting this software as well. So again, it's just about having that versatility, being able to use the different kind of tools that people are commonly using nowadays. That's a big leg up for any student, who's going to be graduating and going out into the world. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and say if you do have any questions about anything, feel free to use the Q&A option. You can also use the chat if you want. I believe participants have access to the chat. We just picked up the Zoom, this webinar program recently. So um, yeah, there's some things I'm not particularly familiar with, but if you do have questions, feel free to use the Q&A or the chat and let us know because you're all still muted. And while I wait for any of those questions, I will just point out that you can see what Studica has to offer for schools from the Toon Boom side of things at our website, studica.com. I would recommend just going there and typing Toon Boom in the search bar and looking at what we have. If you wanted to call us for any reason and talk to somebody directly, which can often be helpful, you can reach us at 888-561-7521. We're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to reach out to like a sales rep to ask about pricing or, getting a lot of licenses or something for your school, you can email our sales team at sales@studica.com. They're very knowledgeable about this. They deal with a lot of different schools and, they've been working with educators and school administration for years and years. So they have a lot of experience and they can be very helpful if you do have questions about pricing or like basically have any further questions about like what might fit what you're looking to do, right? So with that being said, that's pretty much a wrap. I don't see any questions at the moment. I'll probably wait 10 more seconds or so, see if I get anything. Oh yeah, I always forget this part. We'll also be sending up a follow-up email to all of you. That will have some extra information about Toon Boom in it, and it will also have a recording of this webinar in it. So if you need to show this recording to anybody, feel free to do so. Feel free to share it wherever you want. Hopefully it will be a decent resource for you. But I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and close it and just thank everybody for coming today and joining us. And I hope you all have a good day and a good rest of the week. Thank you.